days I tried to ride it really light. Good morning everyone, hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different trigger setups that we have up here and kind of doing a comparison, doing some split times testing with a bunch of different common triggers and some a little bit more uncommon, some high-end, low-end triggers, anything from like $30 up to about $250 in terms of triggers and cost. So let's go ahead and kind of go over the setup. As soon as I said that, of course, the wind picked up, but our first contender is going to be one of my Bushmaster ACRs. This one here is chambered in 300 black, but we're going to be actually switching it out with a 5.56 barrel. It has a standard Mil-Spec trigger on it, and the Mil-Spec trigger on these ACRs are quite poor. So they're a little gritty, probably about 6-7 pounds, somewhere in that range. Very standard Mil-Spec, not that great. Our next trigger, this is one of the most expensive triggers. This is a Geissele 2-stage trigger. It is a 2-stage trigger, so it's obviously going to be a little bit slower. So basically you have a little bit of take up in the beginning, and then it crisply breaks at about 2.5 pounds in the second stage, but it is a 2-stage trigger, so it has a long reset, and it has, of course, a long trigger pull. Next up, which is a little bit better of a trigger for just quick shooting, this is a PSA enhanced polish trigger, very similar to the ALG Defense and any sort of Mil-Spec enhanced trigger. So you have like a 5-pound pull, but it's very smooth, and you also have a very forced, very short reset, so it really pushes your finger back forward. Next up, the lightest trigger that we have actually in a gun right now, this is a Anderson Manufacturing. So this is actually a stainless steel trigger set. As you can see on here, it's actually really light, and it has virtually no take up whatsoever, so it pretty much just breaks right away, but it has a little bit of a softer reset than the PSA EPT, probably because the springs are actually a little bit lighter. And then last up, what we're going to do is we're going to test a POF USA drop-in trigger. This is their curved trigger. It's rated at 4.5 pounds, but honestly it feels a little bit lighter. We're actually going to be putting that in the 10.5 AR-15 with the PSA EPT trigger, and we'll be doing that one there last because I think it's going to be one of the fastest triggers. So what we're going to start off with today is we're going to do 3 sets of 6 rounds, counting the splits for each one, kind of get an average for each trigger, which one's fastest, which one's slowest, and kind of give my thoughts over the whole process. We're going to start out cold on the Mil-Spec trigger. This is the heaviest trigger here. Like I said, it's like 6.5-7 pounds on the pull, and it's a little gritty. So we'll see how fast that one goes. I know I've done like 14s and 12s on it before, so we'll see if going to a lighter, nicer trigger makes any real difference. Alrighty, so we have loaded up. We're just using steel cased ammo. We do have a target about 7 yards away, but we're just going as fast as we can, so we don't really care about exactly hitting where we want to. This is all about speed. So starting out with the ACR with the very heavy Mil-Spec trigger going on the beat. Alrighty, so first shot in a .46, which isn't a split. So shot 2 was 0.8, 0.18, 0.18, 0.16, 0.14, 0.14. So I started to speed up a little bit. This is on a really heavy trigger. So let's go ahead. We're gonna do that 2 more times. Little trigger freeze on the last one. Alrighty, so that was in a 140. We have a 0.16, a 0.14, a 0.12, and a 0.40 for our last split. So there's trigger freeze on there, but we did manage to get down to a 0.12. Alrighty, going from the low, ready? 6 more. Oh, trigger freeze on the 4th round. Alrighty, so that was in a 0.13. We have our first split of a 0.42, our first shot, 0.16, 0.14, 0.14, trigger freeze, 0.30, and then 0.14 for the last shot. Alrighty, so now we're on to the Geissele, the 2-stage trigger. This is the only 2-stage trigger, so it's a little bit longer and harsher than some of the other guys, but super light pull overall. It's 4.5 pounds overall, 2 pound first stage, 2.5 second stage, so it's very clean. Long reset though, and then you have to work back through that first stage. So it'll probably be a little bit slower overall, but maybe even better than the standard Mil-Spec trigger though. Okay, so I accidentally fired 7 there, no problem. Alrighty, so first shot in a .90 was pretty slow. Second, 0.18, 0.12, 0.14, 0.18, 0.14, 0.18. So overall, the average is probably actually a little bit slower than what it was with the other gun. And I fired an extra round in there. Alright, that one there felt good. Let's see how we did. Alrighty, so 1, 2, 0. Oh wow, this is good. So we have first shot in 0.50, second, so this is a split, 0.12, 0.16, 0.14, 0.16, and 0.12. Alright, so one more time with this guy. Felt good? Alrighty, so in a 106, first shot, 0.36, 0.16, 0.12, 0.14, 0.12, 0.16. So that looks like we're averaging around the like 0.14 mark for it, with no trigger freeze on the Geissele. I'm warmed up now, I'm feeling a little bit better. Alright, so now we're on to the Palmetto State Armory. This is their enhanced polish trigger, so it's like an ALG Defense or some of the other enhanced Mil-Spec triggers. It's just very, very smooth, a little bit lighter, maybe about 5.5 pounds. I have 8,000 rounds or so, close to that on this gun, plus another 5.5 on another gun. So I have the most trigger time on these triggers, probably 14,000 rounds fired, somewhere in that range. Plus, you know, another 5, 6, 7,000 just dry fire pulls as well. So I have a lot of time on this trigger. So let's see how we do. And we are loaded up and all good to go. Alright, so the splits there were a little rough. I had a trigger freeze after the first shot. First shot 0.48, then I had 0.36, 0.12, 0.14, 0.14, 0.12. So we're averaging about a 0.14 off the first string there. Going up. Alrighty. So that was a first shot 0.45, second 0.16, 0.12, 0.14, 0.14, 0.14. So I'm still being pretty consistent, like averaging about 0.14. Alrighty, total time at a 108. So this one here was actually one of the worst runs I had. First shot 0.36, which is good. Then I had a 0.16, 0.14, 0.12, 0.16, 0.14. So it still looks like we're averaging around the 0.14 range. Alrighty, so this one here is with the Anderson Manufacturing, their stainless steel trigger set, which is again kind of an enhanced Mil-Spec trigger. It's very, very smooth, has the shortest pull out of all the Mil-Spec style triggers that we have here today. But we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing. 6 rounds, 3 times. So 102. So yeah, I did feel a little faster for sure. So first shot 0.36, 0.16, 0.10, 0.14, 0.14, 0.12. So with that one there, we're probably averaging a little bit under 0.14, but we've got a couple more to go. You ready? I slowed down and ramped up just a little bit for that. Total time in a 104. So we had a 0.14, a 0.16, then we had a 0.12, a 0.14, and a 0.12. Oh. Sad with trigger freeze. So 1.18 total. So we had a 1.4, a 1.2, a 1.6, a 1.6, and a 0.28 with the trigger freeze on it. Alrighty, so now we're going to be running the POF USA, their 4.5 pound curved trigger, but the kit that came with it didn't come with the 2 tiny hex heads to install it that you need. So basically what I have right now is I have the pins in. They're not quite tight, but they're tight enough, but I have just some painter's tape holding it in place. So you still have a very light, virtually no take up on the trigger whatsoever. A little bit of a weak reset, but still that initial trigger pull is pretty much nothing. So we're making do out here, but let's go ahead and see how the splits go. That felt really slow. So 6 shots in a 114. First shot, 1.6, 1.2, 1.6, 1.8, 1.2. So we can definitely do better. Let's try that again. Okay, let's go. A little bit of trigger freeze. I tried to ride it really light. I think we're gonna have one of our fastest splits. So yes, that was a 0.1 was our first. And we had a 0.44, which was actually slower than it took me to get onto target. A 0.08, a 0.10, and a 0.14. I could do better than that. That was slow. So total time in a 1.2. We have a 1.8, a 1.4, a 1.2, a 1.6, and a 1.6. We're gonna go ahead and do a mag dump on this guy and see if we can get some faster splits in there. I haven't had a lot of time on it, obviously, as much as the other triggers. So we're gonna go ahead, give it a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, and run some more rounds through it. Ugh. So that was really sloppy. I definitely need a lot more time on it. So 20 shots. So we had a lot of trigger freeze in there. So let's see. So we had a 0.18, 0.10, 0.16, 0.24, and we had a 0.10, a 0.12, a 0.14, a 0.16, a 0.14, a 0.14, 0.32 trigger freeze, 0.10, 0.14, 0.12, 0.12, 0.08, and then 0.66. Not sure if those are accurate. Then we had a 0.14 and a 0.14 to end things off. Alrighty, so now that we've just done this test with 5 different trigger groups, 4 guns, 4 different triggers, anything from a very heavy, gritty Mil-Spec trigger to a 2-stage Geissele to a single-stage POF USA, really nice trigger actually. The splits are actually fairly similar. If you look at the averages, I'll crunch them all and have them in a display for you by the time this actually gets uploaded, but we're probably looking at like a 0.14, 0.15 average up here. Down to about a 0.14 average at the high end when you take out trigger freeze and that sort of thing. I'll show you with trigger freeze, without trigger freeze. The Geissele was probably the Geissele and the heavy Mil-Spec trigger, probably about the low end. And honestly, nice Mil-Spec triggers up to a $200 POF trigger. Not really that much difference. You can definitely tell it is crisper, it is cleaner, you can run it faster, but the biggest difference is time behind the trigger and actually So basically the trigger is not really going to make you much faster, as you saw going from a $30 trigger to a $200 trigger. The difference is very negligible except for a few areas where I was able to run it as fast as I wanted to. But yeah, it takes a lot of time to be good with that. So definitely in a competition, you are going to be saving hundreds of seconds with a upgraded trigger. But for 99% of the time, your enhanced Mil-Specs or even your Mil-Spec triggers are going to serve you just fine. And your Mil-Spec, your full power springs, they're obviously going to be more reliable than reduced power weights, because with this POF, it might be really light and might be really fast, but is that trigger spring heavy enough to ignite really hard primers? Like today we were using Tula, which is really crappy Russian ammunition, which has really hard primers. So if you have a trigger that has a light spring, there are times when it will not ignite any of those. Now we did put about 2 magazines through the POF and it ignited all of it, so I'm not super worried about that, but there could be instances where a lighter spring, like even in the Anderson manufacturing, which is a Mil-Spec style trigger, but it has like lighter springs and it's manufactured a little bit different, that could cause issues with reliability, whereas with heavier Mil-Specs, even the enhanced polish trigger or the Geissele, which uses full power springs, you're not going to run into those issues. Now, in terms of what trigger is the most accurate, something I really didn't talk about at all or really need to cover, the 2-stage. It's one of the nicest triggers on the market. In terms of a 2-stage, it has a very clean first stage of about 2 pounds and a 2.5 pound break. So in terms of precision shooting, the Geissele 2-stage trigger is definitely the best in that regard. So that's pretty much it for the video, guys. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Hope this was fun for you. Let me know what you guys think of this down below and what's the test I should do next. So this is the first time that I've really had all the different varieties of triggers that I own out and actually testing them back to back to back. I definitely will need more time on the POF USA trigger, and I probably will eventually do a follow-up video, just a standalone review on this guy. So thank you guys once again for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace off.
Hey you. Yeah, you. What are you still doing here? The video's over. Wait. Why are you still here? Like, share, and subscribe. Or don't. The choice is yours. But if you do subscribe, thanks. And I like pizza. Peace off.